Hey lads, wanted to update you all on my quarantine diaries. Just some observations from when I'm going out my 3-4 times a day during my quarantine. All too often we post selfies, rants, info, nights out, etc. But we very rarely post regarding what we're thinking and feeling. No one ever does that. Currently, FB is flooded with information, news, advice and support groups and such. I personally think the majority of it is projected depression. I'm doing those air quote things there. We are lacking posts that illustrate people's internal struggle whereby they are truly affected mentally, emotionally, spiritually and physically and mentally. Why? Because FB is a superficial version of our world, and because it means we put ourselves out there and become invulnerable. Given this, we opt to keep it in our heads and share a sugar-coated version. Or we choose to share a post that illustrates our internal world/struggle. During this time, I'm going to start the Quarentine Diaries. This will be my own random thoughts and feelings about the situation we are currently faced with. Be warned, most of it will likely be in opposition to the government. I do not dislike government, I just don't respect the system, and I spend a great deal of time on internalising the interrelationship of the system at grassroots level. It fails, we know it fails, and we need a serious overhaul of its structures. Some posts, however, will be of an energetic nature, and I am opting to include this because since the pandemic there has been a massive shift in the energy I'm seeing on the streets. It's literally like massive birds are guarding the streets. This is new and out with the energetic pattern from over the last 3 to 5 years. I'll now discuss how our situation leads me down the rabbit hole, a Watership Down reference I believe, on a daily basis, which in turn gets me thinking about history, patterns, society, and the micro and macro systems within it combined with the crazy shit I think about regularly. As I've noticed, this is currently heightened in my pink and fluffy and abstract world. I suspect our quarantine and its effects is going to have an impact mentally, emotionally and physically because we are all living a more sedentary life. Therefore, I'd love it if people done their own quarantine diaries. You're welcome to put your spin on it, as I feel this provides an outlet on a mental and emotional capacity which in turn provides a cyber support network to bounce off. And I'd truly love to read what others are thinking and feeling. Not all of us have the luxury of counselling, and people who have never sought intervention may find they need one during this difficult time. The only rule is, it's not allowed to be what you've done on said day. That's not a diary, unless it's totally relevant to your thought process. It's to be what you're thinking and what you're feeling. I'd encourage you to join me. Get creative, have fun and engage. Day 1. I was in Ashton Lane, Glasgow with a friend a couple of weeks ago. We decided to go on a day sesh somewhere different given we both fancied a change of scenery. Our conversations throughout the day were thought-provoking, to say the least. If only we were in government. I brought up Sainsbury's because I've been thinking about the store in great detail since the pandemic broke. For the last 2 days, I've been pondering on Sainsbury's again. Sainsbury's was founded by John James Sainsbury's in 1869, which makes it 151 years old. The first store was 179 Drury Lane in London. It had its stakes in the shaver centres and home base from the late 70s onwards, but it was not affiliated or working in partnership with any companies prior to this date. That said, I never saw a home base until the very late 1990s. The chain has now expanded whereby, as well as Sainsbury's supermarkets, there is a Sainsbury's Bank and a Sainsbury's Argos. The company is listed on what's known as the Stock Exchange, and the largest shareholder is the Sovereign Wealth Fund in Qatar, and it has stood the test of time, having survived some wars. Tron and myself, I worked in Devon, whereby I visited Dartmoor, Torque and Plymouth throughout the duration of my stay. Then I worked in Surrey, whereby I frequented Knightsbridge, Windsor and went to London. Thereafter I went to Birmingham in passing, then I lived in Belfast and I visited Ibiza. Likewise, I'd been to various Scottish cities and stayed on in Motherwell, on and off, where I attended my professional cookery course, by the way. Throughout my time in all these places, I'd never, not once, seen a Sainsbury's store. Bearing in mind this was from 1996 until 2000-2001, which in effect was their peak apparently. Never saw one. Never. Granted, we had the Savour Centres, which was founded in 1977, and Homebase, which was founded in 1979, but we did not have a Sainsbury's. Surely if Sainsbury's was that old and a chain, I would have saw them on my travels. I recall moving to Edinburgh after my adventures, and again there was no Sainsbury's stores for several years. And then one day, almost as if by magic, in the click of a finger, they popped up all over the place. What has this got to do with the pandemic, I sense you wonder, if you've got this far? Given a recent situation, it's got me thinking about how many businesses will have to close, which in turn has got me going deeper into the rabbit hole, contemplating major events in history whereby there is a pattern, and this has always been the case after these events. Recent events are still up in the air and changeable, however. It appears that Joe Bloggs, who started up a business, whether it be a taxi, joiner, therapist or hairdresser, will not have their wages recouped because they don't have a premises and don't employ a staff. Instead, however, the government machine, as Boris calls it, will pay wages and costs for all the big massive companies where it truly is pocket change to the owners. Why should the owner pay it, I hear you ask? Because they can have the insurance that covered this, because you can get insurance that covers such incidents. Why should the taxpayer pay if they didn't have a good insurance is my point, that's my point. This in turn got me questioning if the government machine, see comments for the paper, is in fact the owner of these stores / investments from a frontman who is said to be like you or I, whereby we are fed spoon he merely started a thriving family business that outlived every catastrophic event throughout history, yet he is just a frontman who is one of the clogs in the government machine. It's got me questioning these events, given they have happened throughout history. It's the first time we've experienced this as individuals. So what do we now know? We now know that the shops are essential for all of us to function, from bathing, cleaning and cooking. And let's not forget, they are essential for those of us who have legal addictions such as smoking or drinking or food. What is new during this time is that deliveries from stores and e-commerce. The government have dealt with all this before, but we have different clogs in the government machine now by adding these two factors. This aspect is new terrain for them. And given the way the high street is rapidly closing in, may well be a good time to do some research on the demographic to establish if stores of higher sales or e-commerce is paving the way forward. Likewise, it's a great situation to allow scientific evidence to be collated on genetics, given each nationality affected is experiencing different patterns / outcomes. That said, my question, or questions, and deep contemplations reside in questioning if the government machine starts up shops / businesses, for example, that they know will be the essence of the community during these times. I'm not just giving consideration to the store, I'm giving consideration to the items they know from history are high demand during these difficult times, such as pasta, milk and chips. Play along with me here. Let's say the government start these companies up. Given they have the collateral financially to know beyond a shadow of a doubt they will outlive every catastrophe, which by default appears to be every 20 years, bang on the money. Very strange that an apparent coincidental disaster happens bang on the 20-year mark, just saying. What if the system by design is so that the genuine Joe Bloggs never gets to progress up the chain of command so they can become big and bountiful? What if the system by its very nature is to knock them back down a peg or two? A tried and tested system that sees the government machine being actual profiteers from the stores and the essential products because they are in fact owned by the government machine. Facebook, Apple, Google or Amazon just popped into your heads there, eh? Don't you think it's funny that the former were all innovators and trailblazers, then at their pinnacle they opted to work with the government? Each of these companies were advocates for autonomy. It was the benchmark and the frame of reference, so what package was offered to them by the government machine to make them lick their lips and rub their hands then take it? Think about that! This then gets me digging the rabbit hole a wee bit further, but my thoughts switched to our recent budget, whereby cuts were still made. We are led to believe that the government machine don't have much money, which is why there is lacking of funding. However, have you saw the amount of money they pulled out the bag for this pandemic? Where did it come from, seriously? I thought we never had it. I thought we never had it. Never. And then I think about something that could be intertwined, because I alternate and jump from pillar to post when I think. What if this is a national fraud in plain fucking sight? As in the government machine will give X amount to the NHS, but our human angels are wearing the most insufficient masks out of every country that's been affected. Where is this money? Because the fact they don't have the clobber suggests they ain't got the money. Why have our human angels not got their masks yet? Why can they have wings and halos and a magic wand but are maskless? That'll do for now. I'm just off for a Starbucks, and maybe I'll nip to Sainsbury's. Bye lads.